Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for another Heresy novel because we still have a lot of them to cover. Today the book is Tales of Heresy, which is an anthology book featuring some of Warhammer's most famous shorts. From The Last Church to After Desa, there are quite some celebrities in here, so without further ado, let's get started. The first short of the book is Blood Games by Dan Abnett, and this follows a custodian who is partaking in the Blood Games. For those unfamiliar with the term, that is when custodies try to infiltrate the palace to assassinate someone of high importance, like for example Malcador or Big E. They do this to discover potential flaws in their defenses, and if you want to learn more about how Alfarius started that practice, you should really read the Alfarius Primarch book by Mike Brooks. However, it also has a second plot that follows a custodian on a spy mission against a noble on Terra, featuring some Spec Ops shit and a bunch of references to Abnett's Legion novel. The weird thing about this short for me is that the first segment felt a lot like a ripoff from the infiltration scene from the Alfarius Primarch book, which quite reduced my enjoyment of it, but that isn't fair at all because the ripping off is the other way around, as this short came out almost a decade before the Primarch book. But compensating for that, I think 4 to 5 stars is a fair rating for this. Both plots were quite entertaining, and we get a lot of cool insights into the custodies and the way they operate. And of course, some pre-siege Terra world building is always nice to have. Next up is Wolf at the Door by Mike Lee, which follows a bunch of space wolves who show up on an isolated planet to bring it back into the Allfather's domain. One problem though, as there are only a few space wolves and the planet is under the domain of an army of Dark Eldar. Now, the one word that I have to describe this short is bipolar. Like seriously, half of this short is awfully stupid bolter porn of 20 space wolves butchering hundreds of Dark Eldar with ease, or stupidly long descriptions that detail every inch of a character's body or every inch of a room's contents. Yet the other half is spent on some really cool dialogue and decision making involving the space wolf commander, where we get to see exactly what the Imperial compliance means, both the good and the bad of it. So altogether, 3 to 5 stars, perfectly in the middle, as half of the short feels like Battle for the Abyss, but the other half feels like some of Richard Strachan's best work. Then Silence of the Storm by Anthony Reynolds follows the Wordbearers Legion as they bring a heathen planet into compliance. From a lore perspective, this is quite dope as it shows what the Wordbearers were doing after Monarchia, showing a return to their old iconoclast methods, which is kinda all I can say without spoilers. But from a story perspective, it is rather boring. It is a very typical story about Space Marines conquering some stuff. There's no real exploration of the Wordbearers vibes, and there's no cool Warlock magic either. I'm going with 2 to 5 because while interesting for Wordbearer fans, it is really boring and forgettable otherwise. Then The Voice by James Swallow. This follows a group of Sisters of Silence who have to find a lost black ship and identify what has happened to it. Now, Psychers are already pretty terrifying in 40k, and black ships are basically prison wagons that go out and capture scores of them. A seemingly dead black ship with all the Psyker cages depowered can easily become a very scary place, as you can understand. Swallow does a great job playing into this and writes a very horrible place for our protagonist to explore. Another cool thing about the story is how it shows a lot of the intricacies of these Sisters of Silence, such as the different sign languages they speak, as well as how initiates are selected to take the vow of silence. Solid short story overall, 4 to 5 silent ladies for me. Also as a side note, it continues the story arc of the sisters from Flight of the Eisenstein, in case you wanted to know what they did after that novel. Call of the Lion by Gav Thorpe is a very weird story that follows a Terran Dark Angels captain and a Ravenwing captain as they are tasked with securing compliance on a human world. Anyways, initially this short story starts off pretty nice, showing a lot of the thoughtfulness and honor that are common for Gav Thorpe's Dark Angels. However, these soon clash with the ruthless, bloodthirsty tactics of the Ravenwing delegation and lead to a lot of heated debates. So yeah, quite a good start here that sets up a conflict between the two protagonist factions with great dialogue to boot. But then it just ends. I feel like this is only half of a very cool Dark Angel story that was never finished, or maybe a setup for another story that I have yet to find. We never get any resolution to the conflict between the characters, nor do we see what happens to the planet. Going with 2 out of 5 stars because this ending is really unsatisfying, but if you know of a part 2 to this story, please do tell me, as I really feel like I missed something here. Or I don't know, maybe Torb just got tired of writing it and decided to call it a day. Who knows? Anyways, then we get to the famous Last Church by Graham McNeill, a short story in which we see the Emperor talk to a priest in the Last Church on Terra. Or well, talk. He spends 90% of the time making shitty comments to piss off the priest. I know many people love this short and I keep on hearing nothing but praise about it, so I was pretty surprised when I read it, because this, at least in my opinion, is by far the worst story in this anthology. But since this is quite a controversial take, I will make a separate video on it so I can get a bit more in depth on the topic. The anthology then ends with After Desa by Matthew Ferrer, which almost manages to salvage this somewhat lackluster anthology book. This short follows Karn and his other Warhound captains right after Angron has been dumped onto their ship by the Emperor. You will learn the logic behind why during the short, but Angron is in a truly foul mood and has so far butchered anyone who entered the room. Karn is the next one to enter and try to calm down the furious Primarch. This leads to a very emotional tale during which Karn learns of the life of Angron, the cruelty of the High Riders, the warrior life on Nuceria, his gladiator friends, and so on and so forth. What makes this short so excellent in my opinion is the fragmented crazy storytelling. Ferrer does a superb job of showing how hard these events hit Angron, as well as how much more painful they are made by the pain engine stuck in his skull. Angron is crying, screaming, raging, slavering, self-mutilating, and more during his narration of the events, while also giving Karn the worst beating of his life. Authors often talk about the butcher's nails and how insane their victims can get, but I think this short really does the best job at showing instead of telling what the effect is. The frequent outbursts of raw emotion also just add a lot to how hard they hit the reader as you slowly piece together the Primarch's past alongside Karn. In terms of lore, it shows why Angron hates the Emperor, but still somewhat respects him. It shows how Karn calmed down the Primarch and convinced him to join the Legion, and it shows how the World Eaters got their name, so lore-wise it too is a great short. This one gets 5 out of 5 stars and it is by far the best story of the anthology. So, Tales of Heresy, should you read it or skip it? Well, I think that if you enjoy the Golden Company, so the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence, I think this is a good thing to pick up. There really isn't a lot of pages about them and these shorts are pretty cool for both of them respectively. And then you just get the excellent World Eater short as a cherry on top. If not, I would just recommend getting After Desa separately, as you aren't really missing out on any lore by skipping the rest. And that's all I got for you today, but I'll present a video on the Last Church soon, so stay tuned.
You've reached the end of this Vox message. If this sparked your pleasure centers, make sure to anoint the subscribe button. Thank you for visiting Bathelloren. May the Omnissiah be with you.